Russian President Vladimir Putin has effectively declared martial law in Russia today. Putin has announced the government's secret mobilization plans, both in terms of economic production and human resources. The State Duma of the Russian Federation has increased the fine for moving without notifying the military enlistment office by 4 times. Putin has signed the law to create the National Messenger app, after the successful implementation of which all foreign messenger apps will be banned. In the meantime, Putin has proposed making all calls and messages of Russians transparent to government agencies. In addition, Putin has officially banned Russian scientists from contacting foreigners without Federal Security Service supervision. Now, each scientist will be assigned a Federal Security Service observer. The State Duma has banned showing films in cinemas that contradict traditional values. And Putin announced plans to grow bananas and other exotic fruits in Russia, to fully prepare the country for a complete embargo on food imports in case of a major war. And if you carefully read everything I've just listed today, you'll see that it's all permeated with preparations for wartime. My name is Alexei Pechey, and today is June 24th. I looked at Russian news today and was horrified to realize that Putin is preparing Russia for total isolation, for a self-sufficiency regime, and this is a sign of preparation for a major war. But let's take it one step at a time. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, leave any comment you want, and be sure to subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechey News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There, we post breaking news as soon as it comes in. I'll start with a funny piece of news to lighten the mood a bit, and then we'll move on to some truly frightening totalitarian news. Today, Vladimir Putin was presented with an initiative for the first commercial banana cultivation in Russia. It will be implemented in the Stavropol region, and 3 billion rubles have already been allocated from the budget for its implementation. There are also plans to build greenhouses there for growing tropical crops such as mango, passion fruit, avocado, as well as pistachio and almond orchards. And the first ton of so-called sovereign import substituting bananas is promised to Russians in the year 2027. But that was just a teaser. Now on to more important news. The President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, has signed a law to create a national messenger which will be connected to the public services system, unite digital government platforms, and become the foundation for implementing a digital citizen. It is noteworthy that the Russian authorities plan to develop this state messenger based on the vKontakte holding, which is headed by Vladimir Kiriyenko. He is the son of the deputy head of the presidential administration, Sergei Kiriyenko. Essentially, this is very similar to the Ukrainian DIA, but with 2 very important differences. The Federal Security Service, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Central Bank, the Tax Service, and so on will be able to access the data of the users of this messenger. But the main thing is that Putin's team stated it directly. As soon as the sovereign messenger is fully operational, all other messengers like Telegram, WhatsApp, and so on will be completely blocked. In Russia, so that all Russians use only the state messenger, well, while the messenger is still in development, someone has already suggested to Putin that all messengers, social networks, and other platforms included in the state list of information distribution organizers on the internet should be able to monitor the messages and calls of Russian citizens. All this is supposedly being done so that automated systems can block calls and messages if there are suspicions of fraudulent activity during communication. In essence, this is legalized total surveillance of citizens. Well, and for now. Today, on June 24th, State Duma deputies passed a law that increases by 4 times the fine for those liable for military service who fail to inform the military authorities about moving to a new place of residence. Also today, the State Duma approved a bill that provides for a ban on issuing distribution certificates to films that, in the authorities' opinion, contain elements of, quote, denial or discrediting of Russian spiritual values. Well, and today dictator Putin signed a decree banning foreign words on signs and in advertisements. The law that Putin signed is claimed at protecting the Russian language as the state language and reducing the level of borrowing from foreign languages. According to the document, all information addressed to consumers, including advertisements, signs, plaques, signboards, and so on, must be presented exclusively in Russian throughout the territory of the Russian Federation. a huge shout out to the national minorities in Russia. Your languages are now banned. Everything must be in Russian only. And, you see, in this situation, that balding bunker rat named Putin still has something to say about the supposed ban on the Russian language in Ukraine. But look at what's happening in Russia. It's Putin himself, the dictator, who needs to be denazified, because he's declared that all the languages of national minorities are now outlawed. Only the Russian language, everything must be in Russian, everything else is, considered second rate. Let me repeat once again, and this monster dares to talk about banning the Russian language in Ukraine. But here are some more news stories that directly indicate that Putin is finally putting the country on a war footing into a state of martial law. Putin signed the decree today changing the list of information considered state secrets. According to the document, from now on, state secrets will include, quote, information revealing the foundations of state policy in the field of mobilization preparation and mobilization in the Russian Federation. Information in the fields of economy, science, and technology has become classified. In particular, state secrets include information about indicators that determine the preparation of the economy for stable functioning during wartime. Information about mobilization preparation and mobilization for government authorities, as well as information about mobilization capacities for the production of general-purpose products. Information about the preparation and use of resources of the unified communication network in the interest of ensuring defense, state security, and so on. Against this backdrop, Putin signs another law granting the Federal Security Service Authority to oversee the cooperation of Russian scientific organizations with foreigners. From now on, the Federal Security Service will monitor the interactions of Russian research institutes, universities, and other scientific organizations with foreign citizens and organizations. For this purpose, a list of scientific fields will be created, in which the participation of foreigners will only be allowed with the approval of the Federal Security Service. In other words, each scientist will essentially be assigned a Federal Security Service officer. But in the meantime, there is another sign that Putin is really preparing for a prolonged war. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has ordered the construction of the largest military factory in North Korean history near the city of Huichon. As satellite images from the company show, construction of this giant facility has already begun, and it is being carried out next to an already operating defense enterprise. Everything indicates that the products of the new factory will not be intended for North Korea's needs, but for export to Russia. This month, the leader of North Korea held artillery exercises and a meeting of the Central Military Commission of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, at which major construction projects of political and military significance and new programs in the field of defense science and industry were discussed. But, I'm talking about how Putin is tightening the screws on Russians as much as possible. No, he still gave a little bit of freedom. For example, direct flights between Moscow and Pyongyang are being launched, as they say. Now that's an achievement, a real achievement. Well, overall, if we're being serious, everything that was decided in Russia today indicates that they are really isolating themselves as much as possible, shutting themselves off, and preparing for a long, drawn-out confrontation. Basically, get used to it, Russians. You're now in a state of total war. Tighten your belts and get ready. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and hit the bell icon. If you want to support the work of this channel, you can do so financially by donating through the links and details in the description of this video, or by using the quick response code on your screen. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.